Hello, good evening. How are you all doing? I hope everybody is doing well. Hoping that you can hear me and all the technology is working as it should. If you are logged on there on Facebook, perhaps you just give us an old comment and let me know that everything is working. And the same on YouTube. I'm actually looking at myself back on YouTube over here on the other screen and on Facebook. It's all seems to be tickety boo, which is great. Yeah, so good evening. You're very welcome. Delighted to be able to get back to hosting some of these evenings after a pretty long hiatus, I guess, over the summer. I was shooting for sure and got out quite a bit in August in Dublin Bay, but definitely summer is kind of my downtime to a degree. So getting back into the autumn now and getting at the photography. So very pleased to be back at it and hopefully enjoying some autumnal colours. I'm just opening up my Facebook feed as well here, guys, just to make sure I can see any comments or anything like that that comes in. There's Paul Byrne telling me it's working. Thank you, Paul. I can see lots of people have come in already, so you're all very welcome. Say hello, guys. Anyway, I'm posting the comments there to keep this one moving. So I'm going to talk autumn colours. All evening I'm going to talk about a selection of pictures that I've put together to show you tonight. I've got stuff from Ireland, I've got stuff from Scotland, Montenegro, Slovenia and Norway. So I've got a big selection of work to kind of just chat through and talk about the locations, talk about some of the techniques that are specific to photographing autumn photography. We'll jump into a bit of stuff about weather, and then as we get towards the end of the talk, I'm going to definitely do some post-processing. Um, Before I do that though, I'm going to say good evening as I always do with a little drop of wine. So I'll tell you what wine I've got here as well because it wouldn't be fair not to. So a little Nebbiolo there from the Langhe. It's actually been open since Saturday, so I've been sipping through it. I had a wee glass on Saturday night, and then we some of the speakers out on Sunday, so it's been going for a few days, but it's actually tasting even better tonight after the few days of being open. Getting lots of comments coming in there. Good evening. Oh, my favorite comment there from Torin Janssen, and it just says sexy as, and some asterisks. So thank you, Torin. I appreciate your vote of endorsement. Brendan is asking me, does the hat ever come off? Rarely, Brendan. Very, very, very rarely. At least not in public anyway. You know, with the sort of hairline I'm boasting, Brendan, you have to have a really good hat selection. It's absolutely essential, you know. Linda saying hello from Pennsylvania. How you doing? Hugh Riley is there. Phil is in Spain. Loads of people jumping in. Loads of people watching. So thanks a lot again, everybody, for joining. I'm going to kick things off now, and I'm going to start to talk about these autumn pictures. If you want to post any comments as we're going along, feel free to do so. I've got this comments box open and rolling in front of me, so I should see things as they come in. But I was thinking to try and do a little Q&A anyway at the end of the session. So probably about 40 minutes, 45 minutes talking, and a little section at the end to ask any questions. So that's it. Let's kick things off. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And you should be able to see my Adobe Bridge now. So I use Bridge a decent bit for managing my files. I'm not a big Lightroom guy for the management of the files, but that's not really a right or wrong. I just like the way Bridge mirrors the system on my hard drive, or it mirrors the exact makeup of my hard drive rather than having a sort of catalog file that manages it. So I'm normally in Bridge or often in Photomechanic as well, because that's a little bit quicker. Okay, so let's select these guys. Here we go. Let's kick things off. This is one of my favorite pictures I've taken in Ireland. It's just a tiny little tree in Connemara. It's only about 10-15 inches high, something like that. Like, it's a really, really small tree, and there'd been a lot of sort of a run of water, and the river was quite flooded again. Something like about autumn that I personally like is that, you know, the changeable weather, the potential for interesting skies, the potential for rivers to be flooded, the potential for mist with the swings in temperature. And I'm not sure if I can quite, you know, call this an autumn image with too much authority, but it does have a couple of leaves just hanging on there, as you can see on the branches. So I thought I'd squeeze it in because it's also a centerpiece in the exhibition that I'm going to open on Friday night, or that is going to open of my work of Connemara on Friday night in near the Station Hotel in Clifton as part of the Clifton Arts Festival. But you can find out more about that on the Clifton Arts Festival website if you're interested in seeing the work. But this is going to be a central piece on it, and I loved just the tiny little leaves just hanging on for dear life amongst the river, and this is such an unusual place to see this this little tree popping up. It's a long exposure. I've shot it at about 30 seconds, something like that. The reason with that is just to make all the water disappear, because with the water flattened out in the exposure, then I think the tree has more of a distinct shape. So that's the reason I would have shot a long exposure here. There is a bit of sunlight in it, and while I'd never really make a note of exactly what filters I used or things like that when I'm shooting, I can say that, because it's bright in the middle of the day, to get 30 seconds, I would have needed at least a 10 stop, probably more like a 10 stop and a 3 stop or something like that, to be able to get a slow enough exposure, just to blur everything out, as I said. And the processing was quite simple, just kind of lightened a little bit. I removed some of the little bits, hints of texture still in the water. I kind of flattened them out by lightening the exposure, and just kept the contrast on the tree where I want it to be. But it's one of my definitely one of my favorite images I've made in Ireland in recent times. So I'm excited to see it printed 40 inches, finished in a tray frame, an ash tray frame by Steve in 360 DPI. So trees are obviously what we think about, I think, when we think about autumn photography, but they don't have to be photographed in sort of tight forests in traditional ways. And that's also what I wanted to, I guess, communicate a little bit about autumn photography this evening in this talk, is that there's many different ways to approach it. Obviously, streams and colours at the edges of streams and dense forests are super duper interesting, but there's so many different ways to shoot autumn photography. This is a new image from the Phoenix Park of mine, and you can see the leaves are just barely hanging on. And I've shot this with a big lens. I have my big lens out quite a lot in my work. I like to pick out details and more abstract shapes like this, rather than it being necessarily traditionally composed. But I guess I just wanted to make the point in this one that, autumn necessarily, it isn't, or these first opening images to sort of say autumn isn't necessarily just traditional masses of yellow and reds and things like that. There's subtleties that you can find in autumn as well, with leaves just hanging on, which are absolutely stunning to me anyway. It's not to say that I don't love to see those beautiful spreads of colour, but there is, there can be more to it, is what I'm getting at. So try to think about autumn artistically as well. More people are saying hello there. We have Rebecca come in, Declan has come in. We have people in Washington State. We have people more locally down in Aries and the Beara Peninsula. Mead, Stella's in there, Doolin. We have Ontario. We have Skerries only around the other side of the bay from me here. People from New York to Terranure. There you go. London, Mullingar. We've got such an array of people in here, so that's great to see. So drop in the comments there anyway, and say hello, guys. As I said, tell us where you're watching me from, and that would be great, just to keep things moving along. So here's one from Glendalough. You can see again that little bit of autumnal colour just barely hanging on in this tree, and I have to say I got so wet taking this picture, like you wouldn't believe how wet I got. I just had the boots on, and it was one of those sort of very boggy images where you're trying to get closer and closer to the tree, and the water is crawling up a little bit over the boots, and a little bit then spills up over the boot, and then you realize there's water inside your shoe, and then you just kind of have to commit and you end up knee deep in water, in the bog, the boots fully immersed, covered. But it's one of my favorite images of Glendalough from the autumn. For the people from abroad watching in here, Glendalough is a national park about 45 minutes to an hour south of Dublin. This is probably an unusual composition of Glendalough. You can see that V shape in the valley in the backdrop. That's a kind of a a common feature of compositions from the area, but having this tree in the center like this is a little bit different, and it was a super duper low angle and a really wide lens. I mean, like backside on the ground, sort of wide angle, soaking wet feet, as I said. You know, not too difficult an exposure, because you know, the light was muted, and was able to sort of capture it all in one frame, and the processing was easy enough. I'm going to talk about how in all my autumn colour images I do tend to focus on the yellows in the frame when I'm processing it. So two key things that we're gonna discuss, and which I may as well mention now because it's going to come up thematically as we go through these images, is the idea that you establish colour in the frame by focusing on specifically the very warm and the very cool tones. And what I mean by that is, for example, here, the yellow grasses, they're warm tones. I would make selections of those warm tones, and rather than try to saturate them, I would actually warm them up a little bit with white balance. So that can be a really nice way to bring a very rich, vibrant yellow to the autumn colours. Obviously they're already yellow, so it just sort of builds on an existing colour base, which can be really nice. And the other sort of point to make on that, which might pop up every now and then as we go through the images, is something which always works with yellow is blue. So warm to cool transition in your autumn colour images as well. So you can see the way the grey of the sky here in this image, I've toned it just a small bit blue. And I think that gives a nice contrast to the yellow leaves in the foreground and sort of protruding up over the horizon. So warm to cool transitions is definitely something to think about with your autumn colour post-processing as well. So this is Glendalough again. We're going to the Irish images first. I do have all this sort of organised by country as we go through things. So we're dealing with the motherland first here. So this is quite an older image of Glendalough, and I will apologise, by the way, if you hear a barking dog in the background. I can hear the neighbour's dog barking a little bit there, so I don't know if that's coming through on the microphone. It shouldn't be too loud anyway, but just in case you hear that. So Glendalough, this is the upper lake. The previous shot was taken on the far side of the upper lake. This is the upper lake, and you know, it's a place for reflections. Quite honestly, it can have magnificent calm mornings, particularly in the autumn and the spring, you know, but the colours were super duper vibrant, absolutely peaking in this particular instance. And this is a shot again you'll see come up in the work I'm gonna, you know, show you guys over the next half an hour, 40 minutes, is sort of big lens stuff on lakes for autumn colours. Like, look for those calm days and try and get out to the edges of the lakes with your big lens. Don't just have your wide angle on. Definitely 70 to 200, or I love my 100 to 400 now. It allows you to just pick out details like this as well, for example. And something else to look for in that context, the previous image, the lighting was very even. That can definitely work for those sort of reflection autumn images. But what is also key to look out for is just little splashes of light just as they hit the trees at the edge of the lake. And you can see that here, how this illuminates the trees. Now, the yellow, the brighter colours of autumn, they naturally have an illumination which can separate them off a dark forest anyway, but you can get these little splashes of light when you have these smaller trees on the edge, and you'll see that in I have a few different images I'm going to show of Montenegro, which also sort of feature this idea or this technique, but it can be really striking to see those beautiful colours off a dark palette. So that's definitely something to look out for. That again is the upper lake in Glendalough. So in the context of photographing autumn in Ireland anyway, it's definitely not just about the trees. You can see from those last few pictures we do have some trees with, you know, beautiful autumn colours, but what we have more abundantly actually is bog, in terms of a colour spread that's worth photographing, or more accessible, let's say, in autumn. So the bog in both Ireland and Scotland does go this absolutely vibrant red, and it's a bit later, I would say, in the season than the trees. Like, you can still photograph these reds. They kind of peak more late October, early November. And this is one from Connemara. This is a classic Derryclare Lough image. This again will actually feature in the exhibition that's opening on Friday in Clifton, and just one of those perfect mornings. But yeah, when that light hits those bog colours, it just gives it such a beautiful vibrancy. And I've been sort of careful to try and compose this with the trees in the centre of the two mountains there, and just was very lucky with the clouds and the shapes in the sky and how it just mirrored the reflection perfectly. Carl has come in from New Jersey. Jeff is saying hello from Maine. Charles, I think, is in Los Angeles, if I'm correct. John from Maryland, and another John from Rathfarnham, just for the contrast. Liam from the Kingdom. Do we have Kerry in here, Liam? I'm not sure if I have a Kerry image in here. I'm sorry to say, Liam, but I'll do my best for the next one. I'm going to have a little sip of wine here, lads, as we're going through things. There we go. So Derryclare Lough bog, colour on the landscape itself. Think splashes of light. This is a shot from Torridon in Scotland, and I think Scotland and Ireland have that sort of synergy, or that you know, Scotland is bigger, the mountains are bigger, I would say, than they are in Ireland, but there's a strong connection in sort of visually how the landscape looks between the two places. And this is an example whereby you can see hopefully that connection from the previous image as well. We're just getting that beautiful red glow on the landscape. You know, it's an absolutely fantastic thing to see. It's just so vibrant, the colours. Difference from this one and the last one, you can see the colours here, a wider lens using the reflection. This one I've used my bigger lens again just to really pick out some of the detail in the distance. Little houses just on the edge. I thought you know, a little bit of dodging and burning in that area just to lighten up the houses, you know, and really bring them out. Loads of people jumping in here. Edward Sutcliffe is here. Good to see you at the weekend, Edward. Thanks for coming to the big day. We have Margot Wynne Connors from Limerick. Ray is in there from Lusk. People from all over. People really from all over this evening. So it's great to see you all there. So a couple of Scottish images now to really highlight that idea of not just photographing the trees, but thinking about the colours in autumn in the bogs as well. So this is an image from a workshop we had last year in the Ullapool area. I'll be going there again at the end of October this year, and it's just a kind of beaten up old cottage. It's totally abandoned, but it's surrounded by this beautiful colours of the bog again. And it was one of those mornings where it was one of those perfect Scottish mornings for landscape photographers, where it was hissing rain one minute and then the sun breaking through the next, and just perfect for you know, for lighting up the scene. You know, this was one where it was tricky-ish in terms of the composition of just getting that little bit of separation in the bottom right, and there's just a tiny bit there at the top of that tuft, and tucking the house in under the mountains. Simple enough with the exposure. I'm pretty sure I used a light grad just to hold the sky in, but no kind of super duper long exposures or anything else like that that would be needed with something like this. There's Mark Simpson saying, love the Ullapool image, Peter. Mark, we were possibly standing beside each other on that workshop when I took this image. I feel like you have a beautiful iteration of that too, if memory serves. I stand to be corrected, but that's what my memory is telling me now. Susan is in from Pennsylvania. Velma's in from County Laois. How are you doing, lads? How are you all doing? So yeah, autumn bog. I love autumn bog, and I just put in a few examples of that because it's something that might sometimes, you know, not be discussed as much when we think about autumn colours. This one, the order has gone slightly awry, I can see now, because we should have been jumping all into Scotland now, but we've come back to Ireland. So I've done something with the order of the images that isn't totally correct, but not to worry. This is the 12 Bends down in Connemara. Again, it's an image that's going to feature in this exhibition that's opening at the weekend, and the theme continues. The reds of the autumn colours of the grasses and the bogs of Connemara. This is taken along the bog road there south of Clifton, and it's a fabulous spot in respect of just like all these little lakes just running along the edge of the road there. You really need to know which ones point in the right direction and things like that for the compositions to work well, and getting there at the right time of year with these colors is great. It's quite green. I wouldn't call the grass green during the summer. It's like a pale green, I would say, with a sort of like little yellow reeds mixed in with it. And actually, there can be too many reeds in the lakes during the summer, even more than there is there now, which can make the separation a little bit trickier to photograph in those areas. But this particular one, this time of year now, conditions were just spot on. And look, we're all a sucker. Well, maybe you're not. I'm a sucker for a good reflection anyway. There's absolutely no question about that for me. So yeah, bog colour. Let's keep going. Scotland. So in theory now we're going to be on just Scotland for the next few images. This one is from the Isle of Skye, and the mountains can be so imposing. The feel of the mountains there is so dramatic, so sheer, but oftentimes the scale isn't necessarily appreciated in a wide angle lens. So I just saw this little wee cottage in the distance, and I loved how it showed, well, a scale to the mountains as well. I love the simplicity of it, just sort of sitting there amongst this rugged area, but also it was a light colour, which gave a really nice foil, I think, to the red grasses of the bog. And I've just kind of allowed the image to be pretty dark in the post-processing, and then I've just done a little dodge on the house itself to lighten it up a little bit, just to really make it sort of stand out in the landscape. Again, this shot is with my big lens. Probably more of my shots are with my mid-range and my big lens. I find, a lot of my images are a little bit more minimal, and I find being able to isolate things in the landscape, those lenses suit that a little bit better for me. It's not to say I wouldn't leave home without my wide angle lens, but ironically, in some ways, shooting wider is harder to be more minimal rather than it being more space. Actually, it creates more opportunity for to be additional distractions in the image, having a wide angle lens when you're trying to shoot stuff like this. Declan Clark, he was standing beside me in the Scotland workshop as well. Declan, yeah, that sounds right. That was a good time. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back. It's a stunning part of the world. Absolutely no question about it. Bavarian Sky Pixels says, great to see other photos from other parts of the world. Well, there's a lot more coming there, so keep watching. We've got a good few more to get through. Goodfellas, big lens means what? So for me, big lens means a telephoto lens, let's say a 70 to 200 or a 100 to 400. So a lens with a focal length, let's say over 100, 150 maybe. So basically a lens that allows you to isolate parts of the landscape, allows you to zoom in and focus on specific parts of a landscape rather than a wider lens which takes in the whole landscape. With a wide lens, you're going to see everything to the left, everything to the right. With a bigger lens, you're going to be able to focus in tight on specific details. It's not a right or a wrong, it's just like what do you like to eat for breakfast? What's your thing? And I guess just in alluding to it as I'm going, I think people often have an interest in how some of the photographs are taken and stuff. So that's why I'm I guess referring to that as we go through things. Okay, I'm on my Scotland buzz now, 150%. So here is another one from Isle of Skye. This was when I was on a scouting mission there many moons ago, and I came across this little scene, and grass is illuminated, beautiful little patch of light, dark moody sky, slow things down with the little waterfall coming through, and hey presto, there you go. You can see a theme emerging here from the Scottish images. This is Schliggerkorn in Isle of Skye as well. Red grasses. This one you can see like a little bit of texture in the water in the exposure. So the water was moving quite quickly and there was nice little white rapids. So I've shot this at about half a second, a quarter of a second, just to be able to maintain a little bit of texture on the river there. Absolutely stunningly beautiful place again though, Skye. Hard to beat it. And I think this is the final one from the Skye images, but we'll see. This is the fairy pools. Again, you can see those autumnal grasses. One thing I wanted to mention with this particular image as well is if you notice how the stream has a nice deep green color in the bottom right of the frame, and that's a natural color within the stream, but you know, the sort of the execution of the image is to use a polarizer, which will really help to lift the greens in a river. It's like looking out with a good pair of Ray-Bans. It really lifts the color, and a polarizer in photography will also do that for you. A few people asking what I mean by a big lens. I see that, Loretto, so hopefully that's cleared that one up. Margot is asking, hope you're doing Scotland in 2027. Yes, and you know where I want to go back to, actually not even where I want to go back, Dara's always done the workshop, is to Lewis and Harris. We'll probably do Glencoe and Isle of Skye with Dara, and then I'm not sure if I'm going to do the Ullapool sort of Torridon Northern Highlands one again, because I just might have some diarying issues with that. But there's a 2027 email coming this week for sure. I've been working on it in the background, so you can expect a bit more update on 2027 this week, guys. Another point on this one, warm to cool. You know, you can see the sky is slightly bluer, a little bit more magenta, and then the warm tones of the grasses, how that provides a nice contrast in autumn, this warm to cool idea. Okay, it's time for a sip of wine for sure. We have left Ireland and Scotland for a second, and going to jump into Montenegro next. So we're going to see a different type of image in these this next series. You know, Ireland and Scotland are all about those wild bogs and mountains and things like that, and dramatic rivers. You know, can be windy, can be very moody clouds. But you know, autumn in these sort of continental European places, totally different. Like Montenegro, Slovenia, for example, but absolutely stunning in a totally different way. So more focus on the trees, reflections, mists, because it's not as windy in there. It makes a big difference. Also, the weather in those areas is much more settled, so you're much more likely to have a sort of a warmer day and a colder night, which is really conducive for mist, which is, you know, perfect for lake photography. So let me bring you back now for a second. And here we go. And we're back to Montenegro, and I'm going to share the screen without my video in the corner so you can see everything properly. And get rid of that little bar down the bottom, and we should be good to go again. So this one is Montenegro, a little village called Mala Crna Gora. And it's just this little collection of houses really at the top of a mountain, around 2,000 meters in Montenegro. And the light is kind of slightly side, but slightly coming in from behind as well. And you can see how trees just really take that illumination of the colour. And I love the sort of patches of light across the landscape with this one. It was an absolutely gorgeous scene to witness. One of my favourite places to shoot in Montenegro is in Dormitor National Park at the Crna Jezero, which is what this is. And it's a place again where I just mentioned before we started talking about these pictures, you know, you're much more likely to have the calmness and the mist and things like that in places like this. And this is the overall scene. This is shot with around 20 mil, 24 mil, something like that, to capture the whole scene. But I've also, again, taken the big lens out in this scene in Montenegro, and then picked out just those simple little details. we can see that illumination of the single tree on the edge of the bank here again in this image, and that darker palette. And I have worked, you know, to sort of in processing to, you know, allow that darker palette to be a bit flat and for the yellow to pop out a little bit, but also there is quite a natural contrast with that. So I just think I've moved the screen by accident, operator error. Hopefully that's better now, guys. You can see the whole screen now. There we go. Yeah, big lens stuff again. Big lens. So 70 to 200, or I used to use 70 to 200, and I used to have a 200 to 500. Now I just carry 100 to 400, but I'm getting very tempted to also buy a 600 prime. So we'll see. Again, just if you look at this tree, this mist again on the same lake in Montenegro, this tree here, and then come back and look at this scene. You see this tree over here on the right? That's the second image. And this one here over on the left, that's the first image. So scenes within scenes for autumn colors. Totally different lens choice. You know, they were taken in different mornings, quite honestly, because I've photographed here at this lake many times. But you can see the sort of the scene within the scene, you know. Again, that's the same tree, but just with different lighting. But I love how the mist almost engulfs the tree on this image. I feel like the way it has that sweeping pattern at the top and the sweeping pattern at the bottom, and it almost feels to me like it's giving the tree a hug or something like that, you know. Again, this is a longer telephoto shot rather than a wide angle shot. Another reflection from the lakes of Montenegro. Anybody want to go to Montenegro? I'm tempted to go back. I had great fun in Montenegro. It's a beautiful place. We haven't done it in a few years. It's a really, really stunning place. There's Helen saying Dormitor, remember it well. Black Lake, love that place. Favorite trip with Explore Light. Yeah, no, it's a class place. It's an absolutely beautiful place. This was one of my favorite images from there, and it was like totally socked in. You could barely see anything with the mist when we arrived, and then the trees just started to appear in and out of the mist, and it's really so ethereal to see things like that. Absolutely stunningly beautiful place. On a calm morning, then, you know, occasionally you get a crazy windy morning, but most of the time, honestly, I would say like 80 to 90% of the time it was calm with reflections. And then I'd say 30 to 40% of the time there was some mist. So a great spot for picking up the mist. So we're staying in that sort of Central European zone here. This time we've moved to Slovenia, up that sort of Mangart road on the sort of the edge of the Slovenian and Italian border. And this one is taken in the autumn, but you can see there are patches of snow around as well, because we were at such a high elevation, and that lighting was just coming in behind those large trees, and I mean, honestly, it was illuminating it in such a stunning way. The sky was amazing, and I've just done some dodging and burning just to really lift up the colors in the trees, and it's something I want to touch on when we get to the post-processing element of tonight's talk. There's Vince from California. Vince, how are you, sir? It's been a while. I hope you're doing okay. And the classic, the Stonewall classic from Slovenia, you know, the Lake at Bled. I don't think I have to say anything else about this one. You know, you know it, you've seen it before, but it's one of those places that, you know, if you haven't been, I would suggest you try and go. It's an incredibly beautiful place, and again, you know, for autumnal colours and things like that, Slovenia is amazing, totally different to what we're dealing with in Scotland or Ireland, and calm as well. You know, great place to potentially get some reflections. And it also has beautiful little streams like this. This is a polarized shot again. Just mentioned that polarized earlier. Do you see that deep green color in the water? That's been heightened for sure by the polarization. Slow exposure on this one. I like how the tree actually comes over the waterfall, because you couldn't see underneath the waterfall properly. So I sort of put something in to almost deliberately block the waterfall compositionally, rather than try to fight with the bottom too much, you know. Slovenia again, this is when we were right up in the hills waiting for the fog to clear to be able to see one of the hilltop churches. but it was so socked in. But the colours in that mist, to me anyway, still look absolutely fabulous. You know, it gives such atmosphere to see such mist with the autumn colours. This is in the Socha River Valley, again in Slovenia, breaking light coming in behind the tree, absolutely pouring rain one minute, then light coming through the next, and it was a really dramatic scene. I think if we get a chance, I have the raw file on this one to show you, because the autumn colours were not as far along as this image may suggest. So I'll see, can I get to that and give you a little look in on that, you know. Slovenia again, you can see that little theme of some of like almost spotlighting with autumn colours in various contexts, like the trees at the edge of the lake, where you're just looking for that little patch of colour, because the yellow is kind of brighter than the scene often. Anyway, like tonally, yellow is a brighter colour than, you know, a dark green tree or a dark green field or something like that. So, you know, looking for little patches of light illuminating little scenes like this can be a really, really good idea to make some beautiful images. Another one from Slovenia. So this time I've used, like, the water was absolutely rushing. I can't remember the exact shutter speed, but it looks like about an 1/8 or 15th of a second, just to really maintain the texture in the water. And that little bit of light again was just coming through, illuminating the backdrop. The trees here can be so beautiful in Slovenia. Like, look how green and mossy, like, all the branches and the bark of the trees are, and they just have this incredible yellow color all around them. And it had been really flooded that day. This was an unusually high amount of water for sure. Connor loving the reflections, and been to Lake Bled a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's a hard place to beat, Connor. It's an absolutely fantastic place to take autumn photos and spring photos and throughout the year, but autumn is particularly stunning. So next up, and finally in this selection of images, before we move to do a little bit of post-processing, Norway. And Norway brings us slightly back to the bog here for a second. Norway probably has everything, really. I mean, Norway is just crazy photogenic, and I know that folks often go there in the winter for, you know, aurora photography and snow photography, but the autumn is just stunningly beautiful there as well. It has the bogs, it has the trees, it has the mountains. It just really has everything going for it in terms of autumn photography. Oops, zoomed in. That was operator error there. I apologize. So this is one from kind of the south of the Lingen Alps. We'll be going back there next week actually, and in a bit of a bog there, and yeah, super duper wide angle, picking up the grasses, picking up the shapes of those interesting trees. You know, fortunately we got a little snow cap on the mountain as well, which is something that you can get it here in Ireland, you can get it in Scotland, you know, more likely in Arctic Norway. So yeah, hoping to get a little snow cap on the mountains with the autumn colours next week there. Something like this. I mean, this is the absolute classic scene, autumnal scene from Norway, in Senja, and we just had some, you know, got some beautiful reflections and vivid colours in the trees as far as the eye can see, and little snow-capped mountains. It was it's a postcard. It's like it's a perfect postcard to me anyway, in terms of location, but incredible to see it. Just incredible to see it. Something a little bit more dramatic. Again, continuing on that autumnal theme of having the little snow cap, having the yellow trees, and how that provides a beautiful contrast. Again, note the darker sky in these autumnal images. Little hint of blue in the sky that can be a nice complement to the yellow colors of the trees. So something to look out for in your post-processing, probably more than in the scenes themselves, but just sort of to be aware that when you're photographing a moody sky and you have some yellow trees on it, you can kind of stretch that warm to cool idea a little bit in the processing as something that can really enhance your pictures, you know. Oops, I keep zooming in there. I apologize. I'm trying to check the comments, and I keep zooming in error. So I apologize about that. I'm going to just leave that alone and not worry about the comments, because I seem to be just messing things up. I'm just gonna keep going. There's a video on making a mask in this on the YouTube channel for the separation between the snow-capped mountain and the dark sky. I think it's called Regulars Meetup or something like that. If you wanna check that out, and the thumbnail has this image on it as well. Anyway, and I don't do very many YouTube videos, so it should be pretty easy to find this one, or pretty easy to find the processing discussion on this one. So again, you know, seeing that the land in Norway can be very yellow, but it can be quite different looking to some of the bogs in Scotland and Ireland as well. And my God, the mountains are pointy. So this one is done in Senja. You can see the water is most definitely rushing around my feet. It's quite a wide angle shot, just working to get that shutter speed just right in the foreground to create the lines, create the shape that kind of leads the eye towards that beautiful peak. Dodging and burning for sure, just to lighten the light parts in the water, and just that helps to create that directional shape. And we're always trying to do that in our pictures. We're trying to direct the viewer through certain parts of the image, and we're doing that in composition, we're doing that in post-processing, we're doing that in the shutter speeds that we choose to create the textures that allow us to create the shape that we want. So in this case, you know, if you shoot 10 seconds, all those lines are going to be gone. If you shoot too quick, they're going to look a little bit too sharp and it's going to be distracting. So getting the right shutter speed to get the right texture, whether you're photographing autumn or you're photographing winter or whatever it is really, really, really important. So that was a run through some collection of about 30 or so autumnal images. But I wanted to also do some post-processing. But before I jumped into some post-processing, I'm going to switch back the screen for just a second and just ask you, is there anything that you would like me to discuss about those images, or is there anything in particular that you want to ask about those pictures before we kick on to a bit of processing? Don't think it's sharing my screen. It's not moving. Something seems to be up with the software here, guys. So I'm just gonna keep on the share screen with no video, and hopefully my screen is still sharing. It wouldn't let me switch screens there, guys. So perhaps you could also just let me know that you can still see my screen and nothing has happened awry with that. Norway in autumn looks incredible, according to Anne. When are you going again, apart from next week? Well, we're going to go again in next September, like September 2026. But myself and Thor are going to actually scout the trip in Lofoten for next year. So it's we try to do try to put new stuff on each year. So like I've seen autumn pictures of Lofoten. It's absolutely stunning in the autumn as well. I know the locations already because we've run 10 trips there in the winter, but we just need to go and shoot it in the autumn to have the sort of pictures, to have the right experience of it and have the stuff to sell it, to be honest with you as well. So yeah, still seeing the thumbnails, Mary. That's kind of what you should see now. It's not allowing me to switch the scene to the camera. I wonder, is the camera turned off? So if you can still see the thumbnails, at least that's not a bad result. At least you can I can still show you the processing and everything. Rebecca can see it. Okay, are many straight out of the camera, right? I would say no. You know, I'm not quite sure what that means, but if it means are any of them without post-processing, then absolutely not. Everything that I shoot has some degree of post-processing. You know, lightening and darkening, directing the eye through the picture, sometimes blending exposures if it's outside the dynamic range, creating atmosphere by darkening the images or lightening the images. So to me, post-processing is an absolutely essential part of the whole experience of creating images, you know, yeah. So I don't have an issue with that. I obviously don't sort of subscribe to, you know, artificially generating parts of the picture. I don't replace skies that weren't there or anything like that. But I most definitely do some redirection of the eye through post-processing and color toning and lots of things like that for sure. So let's jump into a little bit of post-processing. I think that's a good segue into potentially looking at a few images. Okay, here we go. So I mentioned, guys, when we were before, actually, I was going to show you something about polarization quickly. But before I show you something about polarization, why don't I show you the raw file of an image we already looked at, and that might show you, Ray, kind of a lot of what's going on with the post-processing for me anyway. I'm just opening up this in Camera Raw, which is essentially the same as Lightroom, guys. It does the exact same thing. So you should be able to see this raw file. Now, a raw file by its very nature is very flat. Like, it's set up to record a flat version of the image, if we can call it that, because it's recording the biggest dynamic range, and then when you bring it into post-processing, you restore some of the contrast, you restore some of the color. So if we take that as an example, and we just come back into Bridge for a second, we look at that post-processed image. I'm going blind, there it is there. You can see how much lighter it is, the lift of color. The exact scene is probably somewhere in between. You know, it definitely wasn't as flat as the other one, but it wasn't as light and as colorful as this one. So that's mostly what I'm kind of doing with the images. Now, there can be all sorts of more complex techniques to get you here, like, you know, but that's essentially where I see the post-processing is creating the direction to have, creating shape in the image to have good sort of directional pathways in the picture, having pleasing color, having pleasing contrast, and the camera just doesn't produce it that way. So that's surely where it comes out for me anyway. Okay, back to Ecamm for a second. There we go. So let's try and edit a few. Let's do that. Okay. So let's open a couple of files in Camera Raw. Or maybe you guys would prefer to see them in Lightroom. Who uses Lightroom and who uses Photoshop? Is there more Lightroom users out there? It'll give me a chance to have a little sip of my wine while you tell me that. I'm going to pull them into Lightroom for the fun anyway, just so I'm ready. Are you Lightroom or are you Photoshop? Which one are you using? Lightroom, 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 Lightroom. It's funny, way more people are using Lightroom. So Camera Raw and Lightroom are pretty much the same thing, but if I find way more people on the workshops are using Lightroom for sure. This one didn't want to come in because it's already in Lightroom. I don't want to find it, so I'm just going to rename it and duplicate it. There we go, and now I should be able to pull it into Lightroom without the catalog getting too annoyed. Aiming both Lightroom with a bit of Photoshop, Lightroom, both. Photoshop, Photoshop, Lightroom, Lightroom. Overwhelming Lightroom users versus Photoshop users, which is interesting. Some people are using both. I mean, I'm very much using both. Photoshop, I did a whole video on sort of Lightroom versus Photoshop there a little while ago. You know, the raw conversion, remember, that's happening in Lightroom or Camera Raw, they're basically the same. So if you're using Lightroom, you can also use Photoshop Camera Raw. But then when you get a little bit deeper into it, clearly it does become, you know, a little bit more complex potentially as you go through things. You know, there's absolutely no question about that. So let me just teach you something really quickly that's going to be effective. I think we'll start off slow and then we'll work from there. So here's an image from Tullymore Forest in County Down, I believe. Tullymore is in. So this one is unpolarized, okay, and this one is polarized. I know also there's a person in this one, but can you see, look how deeper the color is on the trees. Do you see this little bit of yellow color that's in the river here, where it's kind of whiter here, look. So the polarization takes off those kind of, you know, unpleasant, that unpleasant glare, and it just deepens the color. So if you're going to go photograph autumn colors, it's a very good idea to have a polarizer with you. Strongly suggest the polarizer. Okay. Another thing that's you know, also I think important things in terms of post-processing, with autumn colors, is I'd mentioned it during the talk about creating these warm to cool ideas, and I talked about selecting the yellows. So if we just take this image really quickly, okay, we say, well, it's a little bit dark overall. Let's just lighten it just a little bit, okay, and then let's also just get a linear gradient and just pull down the sky a little bit. So I just want to create a little bit of balance to begin with. I'm just going to pull down the highlights in the sky because it's primarily this area that I'm interested in bringing down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another mask, and I'm going to do a color range. I'm going to select all those yellows. Okay, so that's selected all the yellows in the picture for me. And what I'm going to do with those yellows is I'm just going to lighten the white balance. You see that, how that brings out the natural reds, and maybe a little bit of saturation in there, how that brings up those lovely warm colors of the yellows and the reds in the bog. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to now grab the sky. This time I'm going to grab the whole sky because I'm doing a white balance change. When I'm doing white balance changes, I typically grab the whole sky rather than intersecting masks to create transition zones in the bottom of the mask. But that is getting complicated, and that is another day's work, and that is covered by another video which you can find on that YouTube. So let's just work simply. Let's talk about warm to cool, grabbing the autumn colors with a color range in the foreground, and then adding a little bit of blue to the sky. A little bit of magenta maybe as well. And you see how quickly we've created that warm to cool transition. That's not a technically difficult thing to do. If you have, you know, even a basic knowledge of Lightroom, you can make a color range mask for your foreground, which gets the reds, and you can make a sky mask for the sky, which gets the sky, add yellow to one, blue to the other, and create a warm to cool transition. And if we reset it, you can see how different it is from just those two very, very simple adjustments. And, you know, without a huge degree of interference in the image. And if we go back a step and go, well, this is where we actually got to. Excuse me. And I have to say, with this finished image that's in this presentation here, because I was getting it printed, I did desaturate it a little bit for the print. I thought it was too saturated. I pulled it back to somewhere like about here, because I thought the other version was too saturated. But you can see that quick little adjustment, and hopefully that can be of some use to you guys. I want to show the polarization. I want to show another technique for working with autumn colors. Oops, somebody's already edited that. Let's reset it. Okay, so here's the original image. Okay, this is again Tullymore Forest in the north of Ireland, and with these sort of river scenes, forest scenes, you generally want to kind of make them kind of moody. So let's unclip the blacks with the curve down the bottom here. Just lift those blacks up and then darken it down. Let's create that bit of mood, okay? And let's take a few radial filters. And let's start to try to direct the eye into specific parts of the picture, like here. This is a sort of precursor to the technique I'm going to show you, because I know this is kind of simple. Here, and just start to make that little bit of shape in the image. And the technique I wanted to show you was using a kind of a color range selection and a brush intersection in conjunction to really lighten up specific yellow colors within the picture. So what I'm going to say to you is create a mask, okay? And with the mask, what we're going to do is we're going to select the whole picture, okay? So I'm just going to get a linear gradient, okay? And I'm going to select from the top all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to pull that down. So that's essentially selecting the whole picture right now, yeah? And what I'm going to do with that, you could do that with a brush. I'm sure you could do it with a radial, maybe not, that would be a pain. But select the whole picture. And then what I want you to do is increase the warmth in the whole picture. And then what I want you to do is lift the whites in the whole picture. And then what I want you to do is do some minus clarity. When you've done some minus clarity, I'm looking at how this affects the autumn colors, the leaves. Lift the exposure a little bit. Now, that looks horrific, okay? There's absolutely no question that that looks horrific. But what I'm trying to do is basically introduce yellow warmth and vibrancy just to some specific parts of the picture. So by using that linear to select the whole image, I've added it to everything. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these three little dots here, and I'm going to intersect that linear with a brush. And what that means, because it's intersected, wherever I brush, it's just going to apply the adjustment to just that area. So if I get brush now, and I start to brush, I'm going to push with this brush, I'm going to push the flow down to about 20 or 30%. See, it disappears from everywhere else, you see? And then I start to just brush it in to the places where I want it to be. So I'm just brushing in that warmth and that little bit of whites up just to the areas that I want it to be. And that can help you to really create a lovely directional shape within the picture. But you can go one step further with that, and you could, instead of doing it that way, you could select a color range, okay? And you could select the yellows within the color range. I'm going to get some of the leaves down here as well. I'm going to hold down Shift and another leaf down here, something like that. Again, I'm going to warm it quite a lot. I'm going to lift the whites in it quite a lot. You can see that's too aggressive. It's sort of all over the picture. Again, I'm going to intersect it with a brush. The second I brush, it's going to disappear from everywhere, and it's only going to be applied to the areas that I want. It's a really nice, subtle way for me to bring up the yellows in just the area I want. I'm going to increase the flow a little bit. There we go. Look how I can just lift the leaves in that right corner, just out really nicely. Just bringing the yellows out. And if I turn this on and off, it's a really nice technique for just lifting that specific yellow color. Now, the image itself, you know, it needs more work to be finished, but if we just quickly open the shadows just a little bit, we can also lift the blacks on it just a little bit. Let's apply a small bit of clarity, and let's make it a little bit darker and moodier. And for the crack, let's throw radial into the center. Let's make that a little lighter, bring that mood, but we've lost this highlight there, but that's okay. I'm going to subtract. I'm going to subtract with the color range, and there we go. Fix the whites now. So if we reset, that's where we were, and that's where we got to. So that targeted you know, color range selection with intersection of brush, it allows you really to make the leaves stand off, the sides, you know, radials and things like that. It's not massively complicated, but you know, these sorts of images are more accessible in terms of post-processing, let's say that. So I'm going to sign off, and in a second I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm going to show you this picture here, okay, and how the lighting was so dark and dramatic, and the trees were lacking in a little bit of yellowness, that they weren't fully along. So I did quite a bit of work on the leaves with just warming them up to really make them much more vibrant. But I want to show you where you can potentially get to with your post-processing. So this is one that's definitely quite different to how it looked in the raw file and how it looked in the finished file. So I'm going to sign off with that because I'm coming up to my allotted hour, and I'm always conscious of going on too long on these things. It's not letting me switch back to my video. I don't know why that's happening. I was going to try and sign off with actually saying goodbye to you, but I'm sure you're just seeing those thumbnails, it seems, still, and the video is not changing. Just give me a second. Let me just see. Is that still running? It's apparently still working recording. My camera's still on, but my face is not coming through for some reason. Okay, not to worry. Yeah, that's it for the evening in terms of what I had to say. Would anybody like to ask any questions? If you want to ask anything, feel free to pop them into the comments. I'm watching there. I'm getting some thank yous, and people seem to have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm just going to keep an eye in the comments now for a minute or two in case there's any other questions that people want to come in. Thanks Colin, thanks Robbie, thanks Mark, thanks Rebecca, thanks Linda, thanks Tim, thanks John, thanks Jackie. There's loads of people. Thanks Helen, popping in to say hello. So I'm going to do as well in the I have it in my diary already. I haven't put it up online yet, but I'm definitely going to do a follow up how the autumn went. So the next few trips. So I'm going to do a 10 days in Norway now. I'm going to do. I've got a group coming in from the States with Nick Page in Ireland, and then I'm going to do a trip to Scotland. So I'm going to do a roundup when I get back of all those trips. And do another video like this, so we can kind of, again, should be maybe more post-processing focused video. So you guys will hopefully have shot some new autumn photography as well, and we'll give you some more inspiration that way. Somebody's asking me about the YouTube video. Let me just see, can I find that there for you? Okay, just bear with me. I'll try and find that for you guys. So there's a good few post-processing videos on the YouTube channel if you want to find them. Maria, thanks a million. Said you love Sunday. I really appreciate that. And Brendan at the big day in the conference. Yeah, it was great to have such support there, honestly, from people. To see so many heads, and it's something that's been ongoing for ages. So. Yeah, it's great to see people. It's always honestly sort of a proud day for me to just see people there, and people turn up and have a look, and I'm inspired by the speakers too, and yeah, it's just a nice day for photography vibes. So I really appreciate everybody coming to that. Yeah, so here's the YouTube thingy. Not a big YouTuber, a measly 773 subscribers. But the video I think I was referring to with the masking was this regulars manual blending and editing in the transition zone. If you want to learn more about post-processing, highly recommend that you watch Post-Processing Landscape Photography with Peter Gordon and Masking in Lightroom. Those two cover a lot of the core techniques. There's a Photoshop Fundamentals one there as well, which is worth a look. Thought I did something on luminosity masks. Can't seem to find it there. Yeah, maybe I didn't. I have to do something on luminosity masks. I thought I did. Anyway, not to worry. There's a few bits there. I've given up trying to make online courses and monetize it because I basically can't finish the course before Lightroom changed the interface again, and then I've spent 2 summers and you're back to square one. So I'm going to just pop stuff up for free, and hopefully it'll be useful to Peter, to people, to Peter, to me. Yeah, hopefully to me too. Okay, that's it. Signing off. Many thanks again. Really appreciate everybody being here, and yeah, we'll catch you soon. About another 6 weeks for another one of these, but you'll get a message somewhere about it. All right, lads and ladies. Take it easy. Good night. Bye-bye.